Hi, this is Mike Hendrickson from OSCON 2017 in Austin, Texas. I'm here with Christopher Aedo. Christopher, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing, Mike?
Very well. So you did a really nice keynote today, and it was really
Thanks.
nice because you talked about open as an infrastructure and building and using and deploying an open infrastructure.
Yeah.
Can you unpack the different layers a little bit about
Sure.
what you guys are doing?
The thing that I'm trying to get people to pay attention to and think about is notice the infrastructure around the stuff we use to build open source software. And I use the word infrastructure because it's the kind of thing that we tend to forget about. So normally you think about power lines or water supply as infrastructure, and you never think about it until it goes away. So when we're in the building software world, infrastructure, people usually think about that as just compute, networking, and storage. But I want people to think about also the pieces that they need to build software. So the extra things like the repository management and how they communicate. So whether it's asynchronous or synchronous, the platforms or software that they use to do that.
So this is everything a developer needs.
Yeah.
It's like their dial tone for their job or whatever.
Exactly. That's a dial tone is a perfect way to paraphrase that. And I thought about doing something about phones, but I realized the chances of people in the audience ever knowing what a landline is probably only half of them have ever seen one. So
yeah. So from an infrastructure perspective, where should, let's say a company doesn't have a good infrastructure built, where should they start? And assuming that they're starting with open source, what is the easiest win for a company to get going with building an open infrastructure?
I think the easiest win is to choose a provider. My suggestion is that people look really closely at OpenStack-based infrastructure providers, and there's a whole bunch of really good ones out there. And the reason you want to look at that is because they're open and they're based on open standards versus heading towards the bigger players that are closed and proprietary. You run a risk of actually being locked in, and you have to jump through a few more hoops if you ever want to move off of one of those providers to somewhere else. And you never know when you're going to run afoul of something that directly competes with their business interests that they might not want to help you with. And there's just things get a little bit trickier when you're in one of those big players and you can end up getting stuck there.
So when you say provider, you mean almost a cloud provider,
Yeah.
a storage
So
provider?
for that piece, like you're talking about a business getting started, on the one hand, I'm not really saying everyone should build their own cloud because it's a lot of work, and unless you have significant scale, it's just not worth it. If you only need a handful of machines to run your business, it doesn't make a lot of sense for you to invest in your own big private cloud necessarily. But you can invest in it or use a cloud that is open to start with.
Let's take another approach here. Let's look at a large enterprise company. Let's say they're in the financial services industry and their legacy built on all sorts of hardware and kludgy software patches and stuff that they've assembled together. How does a company like that go about transforming, since we're using this word transform? I prefer to think of it as continual transformation. And how do they get started building their infrastructure? What is the easiest win for them? Large enterprise company like that.
I mean, I don't feel like there is an easy win. I think that the truth is big companies need to recognize that they're not going to be able to forklift. They're not going to be able to just grab everything that's this big mess and just put it on someone's cloud. The reality is you have to re-architect, and it gives people, in a lot of good ways, the benefit of it is it gives you a chance to rethink what you're doing and adopt some of the newer things like container technologies and
microservices.
Microservices and some of the orchestration around that, which can make it much easier for these big organizations to see the business logic and see how it interfaces directly with the different services and start to break apart the old legacy stuff. And if you're taking that approach, a lot of times you can do that piece by piece. So you don't need to do it all at once. You can take a core service and move it to a newer infrastructure.
So I hear kind of deconstructing the architecture that you have and then re-architecting the infrastructure you want to achieve. Is
exactly.
That a way to
that's a great way to put it.
Okay. And in that, does microservices play a role? Like if you have a big monolithic system, maybe split it and then split those, and Instead of just creating a bunch of microservices and hoping they work, and then orchestrating them.
Yes, microservices plays a huge role, and the reality is, for a long time, this is the same thing as service-oriented architecture. So a lot of systems that people have built can be pretty easily decomposed, especially if they started from an SOA place in the first place. It's just, I think it does make a lot of sense to focus on small pieces at a time, and that's the thing. Like, instead of looking at your entire project and saying, okay, this is the year we containerize. Maybe not. Maybe this is the year you containerize one piece of it and make sure that you can still get to your data and then start moving piece by piece.
So are there any different industries that you guys work with? Or are you doing infrastructure internally at IBM, or do you help with your partners doing infrastructure as well?
So what I do, what I do is developer advocacy. And I joined IBM to help build clouds, but then I moved away from that. And one of the things I'm doing a lot of work with is within open source communities and trying to improve the way the open source developers and developers around the world perceive IBM. I think we have lost sight of what matters for some big parts of our messaging, and we're trying to be a lot more genuine and start from a place where our motivation is to help developers first, not sell them product, not convince them to sign a big check. We just want to start by helping developers. So we're trying to build more tools that are useful and engage developers in places where we as like me and my team and those of us who are longtime open source contributors can help them and enable them to do things better.
So if we fast forwarded 12 months from now and you look at your developer ecosystem, how would you like to say you've improved? Speaking about how do we get them on board, how would you like to see IBM improve developers' lives in the next 12 months?
That is a great question. I think in 12 months, I would really like to see us at a point where we've provided a bunch of useful libraries, some sample code, and some really useful tutorials and educational material to get people jump-started. And I think if we continue some of the stuff we're working on at developer.ibm.com/code, a lot of that stuff, it's still evolving, and we just launched it a month ago, but that's where we're centered and where we're trying to build a lot of useful things for developers. And so in a year, I'd be really happy if we had a bunch of useful things there and people were saying nice things about it.
Excellent. Christopher, we look forward to that journey. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Mike. Good to meet you.